If Kelly taught us anything, it was that some cops truly are bad. Bad to the boobs, and the butt, and thighs. But today we want to learn just how bad a military mama could be. That's because today we will be looking at Polynian number 14A, Betty. Betty here has been a short time coming. I say that because it feels like this was the quickest we got a color variant for one of the Polynians ever. If we think about the original release for Kelly, she was supposed to be early last year, and it took quite some time to get her when we finally did. But when we did, we found that there was a lot of issues with production. That of course was blamed on the pandemic, and I hoped that maybe they might have done a revision to Kelly, but here we're getting Betty, which is a whole new color scheme. She's wearing what seems to be sort of a desert officer's uniform. I'm not quite sure, I've seen other military uniforms that sort of remind me of this. Not quite as skimpy though. And rather than being a blonde, she is now a redhead. At first, I didn't know how much I was excited for this, but the more I took looks at the prototype images, the more excited I got. As you guys may know, Kelly is one of my very favorite Polynian. From the first time I saw her, I fell hard. So how could I not do so for just a better looking, potentially better produced, and different colored version of her? I don't know. Let's go ahead and dig into this one, because I'm interested to see if they could potentially bring some honor back to Kelly's family name. If you've never purchased a Polynian, don't worry, they're going to give you some handling instructions for the joints here. But moving Kelly aside, Betty here comes in 2 blisters, similar to Kelly, and she has all of the same accessories as the previous model, albeit with a different color scheme on them, and the more that I'm looking, the more excited I'm getting. This looks really cool so far. But what's that, you say? Could it be that right out of the box, her head is detached? Epic. Alright, that might have been a fluke, because when I took her out, her neck joint just wasn't connected to the peg in her head, and that's fine because it went right back in. But what I will say is now that I have her in hand, I am very happy with this. We'll go over everything in time, so just give me a moment, but what I really want to get through to you guys right now is just how much sturdier she feels out of the box. Yes, her head fell off, but now that I have her fully put together, she feels great. Even once I plugged in her hair, I'm really satisfied with the way she feels responsively. Everything here feels nice and tight because she's brand new, but furthermore, she is not falling apart. Kelly here is great, but one of the big problems I had with her was with the neck. When you have the tie on, sometimes it's really hard to do anything with her head without her head falling off. But I've gotta say, Betty here really can move her head around with ease and nothing is falling off. And that's great because I think the tie covering her cleavage is a lot of fun in regards to design. And another thing I want to go over is that tie. This may be hard to show you because it's transparent, but there is a small production error already that I'm noticing on the tie here. There's a difference in regards to finish. There's a sort of rough patch right here to the left that you can see. That is not just because of the light, that is actually sort of rough. And this is a very smooth, clear plastic. It's not the hugest problem right now because I'm not staring at it, but if you get in close, it will be noticeable. Now, similarly, Kelly had a clearish tie as well as some other accents of clear plastic in hers as well as in the skirt here, but it came off really badly done, whereas with Betty here, the accents of purple that are clear, like here in the edge of the skirt, are really, really interesting looking with some light on her. Taking a look at the shoulder, if you look at this purple accent here at the edge of the cap of her shoulder, I guess you could call it, it's sort of a glittery purple plastic, and that looks awesome. Kelly had a similar one where it was just blue with sort of specks in there, like gray specks, but I think it works so much better here on this one in purple. It's also used at the edges of her feet with these little purple accents as well. Another big difference is the fact that her stockings are potentially white. Here's a fun conundrum for you. Does she have white stockings on, or is she just wearing military sort of pouches on her legs? Because obviously those are meant to be like garters for Kelly, and then she's wearing a gray stocking. But could it just be that her stocking matches her regular skin tone? Why don't you tell me what you think in the comments? Personally, I like to think she's wearing white stockings. All around though, I'm really liking the way this one looks. Color-wise, it actually hits pretty nicely. The tan contrasts really well with the purple and black and gold, and then her skin being a very pure white all look really good together. Her hat also has some of that clear purple plastic as well in the brim of it, which looks really sweet. It's just another little added piece of fun. I really am enjoying the color scheme on this. But now that I've gushed about her enough, let's get into the figure. She's going to be the standard 1/12 scale, so she's going to be around 6 inches tall. Her articulation will be much like the rest of the Polynian gang thanks to these hinged peg joints. It's almost like a Figma joint, but just a little bit cheaper possibly. These will allow for swiveling at either side, her head can go up and down because of the hinge, and it can sort of roll around thanks to the fact that it swivels. Her shoulders are a bit limited thanks to the size of them, but they can go in and out nicely, and they can swivel at either side thanks to the peg. The elbows, our favorite elbow gang rise up, can go in and out thanks to the hinge and swivel at either side. If it was a little bit looser, I'd show you a little bit better. The hands are very similar as well because there's a tiny little joint in there too. That's going to go up and down on the hinge, and it can swivel either side. The waist has the giant ball hinge in there, which is great because it will go up and down, though with her giant chest, she ain't going too far forward, though she can go a bit backwards. Actually, she's pivoted pretty far back if you can't tell. And that creates a little bit of gappage, but it's fine because these girls are robots. Under her skirt, there are 2 massive peg hinge joints, which will allow her to kick outward and of course swivel either side of that joint, but be careful because the rub could create some discoloration. You can also take off the skirt by taking off this little pouch in the back, which will allow you to get a little bit better rotation out of them, but they can go pretty far. The knee gang, is much like the elbow in going in and out and swiveling at either side, but I will say these are really good because there's really nothing stopping them, whereas with the elbows, these cuffs will cause a bit of limiting when you bend it backwards, but still, it still looks perfectly natural when you pose her. The foot. Well, inside of that massive cuff, there is going to be a tiny joint in there, which will allow some up and down. You can swivel just a bit, but I'd be careful because that will cause some paint rub, and you don't want to do that now. Finally, you can pose her hair thanks to the same ball peg joint in the back, which goes up and down and swivels around, and you can do plenty of fun things with this to make it blow in the wind. And even her hat has a tiny hinge joint there, which will allow the hat to go up and down, and you can swivel it the way that you want. I don't know why you would make her look like this, but I don't know, I guess it's fun. You can sort of tilt it this way as well. Polynians are so fun because of the interchangeability, and yes, any of the parts you see here can be used on other Polynians, and vice versa. So if you want to give another character her hat, go ahead and do so. Or if you want to put her head on someone else, you can do that too. But those are not the only versatile accessories that she comes with, and by default, she wears a sheepish little smile. Rather cute. But like every other Polynian in the series, you can rip off her hair and then her face and attach a new faceplate. And okay, I actually love this. It's subtle, but I really like it. She's just showing a bit of teeth. It's just a smile with her eyes nice and bright and open. And yeah, I don't know, it's just really charming to me. Those bright gold eyes are really striking too. I don't know if I mentioned that yet, but I love those. And this last face is called the Winky Woo. It's actually not, I just made that up, but I do rather like this face. She's winking with her mouth open in a way that I can't really tell if she's being sort of stimulated or if she's trying to flirt. The blushing in conjunction with that open mouth, it kind of confuses me, but I kind of like the confusion. What do you think would inspire a face like this? Drop a comment below.
You saw my winky woo, didn't you? I'll never forgive you. I'll eat it.
Let's take a look at the hexagonal base, which has a single peg joint in it, which will allow her foot to plug in at either side. The stands actually work really well, to be honest. You can get them into some poses that they might not be able to normally stand at if you have the peg plugged into the foot. But I will say, over time, that peg could potentially widen and gauge out the whole of the foot, so be careful there, and maybe put them on a arm base as well. Now those are sold separately, but you could pretty much use any other arm base as well. But what fun is a stand when your girl wants to throw hands? So let's take a look at those. She comes standard with a pair of balled fists with her thumb at the very top of her index. And of course I mention this because they can be unplugged from the little peg and new ones can be plugged in. Sometimes you have to use your teeth, but that's sometimes just the way things go, boy. Now, if you take a look at the right side of the screen, you'll see she's still wearing a fist, but this one has her thumb curled in front of her knuckles. That might be a better way to throw a punch, so use those fists accordingly. While on the left side of the screen, we see her with an open hand. Maybe she's exclaiming, "Dang, that's a nice grenade you got there, sir." And I imagine if you put on the right music in the barracks, she's gonna throw up horns like this and rock out with her tie out, if you know what I'm saying. What kind of music do you think Betty would listen to? Metal? Because she's a robot? And that's not all, because she comes with these final 2 hands. And you may think, more fists? But I assure you, they're a little bit more than that. On the right side of the screen, we have a slightly open, clasped hand. Now, this is a gripping hand that she can use for her accessories, while on the left side of the screen, she has her locked wrist accessory fist. I keyed that term myself. I say locked wrist because it actually doesn't have to be plugged into the peg joint there. It's its own joint in and of itself, and because of that, this is just a sturdy hand that has a hole in the top of it, which can be used for gripping other accessories. So with that in mind, let's move into grippable accessories. What would you like her to grip? So holdable accessory number 1 is going to be this pair of handcuffs. Much like her blue sister Kelly, this girl comes with a pair of handcuffs, though these ones are a matte black versus the shiny silver ones that came with Kelly. I actually like these quite a bit. You see, Kelly's looked really cheap because of the fact that they were just this shiny silver paint and they looked really bad. It's a very thin plastic. These things are actually pretty warpable, so be careful with that because she could break these cuffs. And not only are they holdable, but they have a peg as well, so she could hold them that way, or they could be plugged into one of her leg pouches just as well. The next accessory is going to be this, which is called the stun rod. Kind of a boring name, but it's said that it can give off an electromagnetic pulse, which can shock and stun its enemies. So I guess she'd probably be a pretty effective officer with this. It's really interesting looking to see the sort of chamber in the middle that almost looks like a gun in and of itself. And then the gold highlights and that blue accent all really do give off the idea that this thing probably would zap you pretty good. Very simply, it just plugs right into her hand with that peg, and she can hold it pretty good. I personally recommend the locked wrist accessory fist for this one, mainly because it's the perfect shape for a cylinder, and the handle of the stun rod is a cylinder. You'll see later why I would recommend the other fist for the other accessory. If you wanted to be able to move her wrist though, you're gonna wanna use the one with a joint. But while she's wielding this, she could also wield this, which is just listed as small shield on the box. A very plain name, unfortunately, but it is a pretty cool little accessory. It does have another one of those windows of the purple plastic, which looks really cool in the light, and this is just a handle, so you plug that right in. The box lists it as actually having the ability to protect her from the stun rod's shockwave, but it also suggests that it could be used as a knuckle, so she could just beat your head in with the shield as well. Very effective. But that's not all, because there is further utility to these accessories. As you can see, there's a hole in the top of the shield, and the handle is a perfect cylinder. So let's do some simple math and plug one into the other. But this is where you want to be careful, because that black plastic rubbing the tan will cause some paint rub. So be careful there, or just get underneath this with a very, very fine sandpaper and grit just a tiny bit of that plastic away. This time it seemed much better off than the previous one, and I'll say it actually looks quite a bit better too, but still, you will want to be careful. Some of them will have thicker paints or thicker plastic than others, and you could very well cause some damage to your own accessories. But this is the upgraded version of her stun rod, which, when you plug it all together, it becomes this sort of huge beast of a weapon. After reading the box a little more, it actually suggests that her suit is based off of an American sheriff's uniform. I don't know in what kind of county there would be a sheriff running around with an electro rod / riot shield combo and potentially even a combat shotgun on their back, but damn, that sounds dangerous. But altogether, this new weapon looks amazing, though it is a bit impractical to get her to hold it right. The one thing I like about it is that it has one of those pegs on the front, which would allow her to hold it with 2 hands as if it were a really devastating weapon, but it's almost impossible to get her to do. Still, it looks really badass. And finally, what I think many of you will agree is her best accessory is this amazing combat shotgun. There's nothing else to say about this. It says that it's an energy gun on the box, and that's a fun way of making it seem less violent, but damn, this is a honkin' weapon for a honkin' type of woman, if you know what I mean. I love this. I loved it when it was Kelly's weapon, and I love it even more now. The accent of silver, that little bit of blue in there, it all looks really good, really clean, and without really any details painted into the front, you have a lot of dug in sort of physical details which make this thing look awesome. It has a hole on one side and a peg on the other, so this can be plugged into her back or onto her side or other places that the Polynians have little socketable areas. And this one has a thin sort of squared handle, which, like I was saying earlier, would be perfect for her gripping hand because that's a bit more of a square shape rather than the locked wrist has a sort of circle to it. Just matching the right shapes. It's like being a kid again. And what else is there to say here? It's just a big shotgun, and it looks phenomenal. Again, it might seem a bit excessive, but I love it. It's such a fun contrast to the cute and beautiful characters, having them wield these massive, crazy weapons. We call this the Peacekeeper. The good thing about a weapon like this is that it's lightweight enough for her to do some really cool Terminator-style poses with it and just point it off into the distance. After all, she is a robot, so it's not like a gun would be too heavy for her to carry. Damn, this shot is perfect for her website, crimestopperswithaz.com. So, now let's really talk about how I feel about this figure. I really like it. Originally, I was not that stoked, and I was kind of mad. It sort of felt like it cheapened the release of Kelly because this got announced so soon, but I think she really works well with the rest of the series. She makes up for a lot of problems that originally were there with Kelly. I will say initially handling her, I felt like she was a bit more responsive, but over time, the shoulders were a big problem on Betty here. She was falling apart quite a bit in that regard, so be careful. If you know how to pose a Polynian, this won't be a problem, but it can be annoying at times. I didn't say much about it, but the hair being inflexible is one of the biggest problems a figure like this has. The hair is so big, and it covers so much of her front and back, that it does limit how much you can pose her. There are ways around it, but if they just made those front bangs a bit softer, it would have made this so much easier to pose. Color-wise, I really do like this iteration. Her uniform looks awesome. The accents of purple are surprisingly refreshing with the rest of the design. And I'll say the accessories even, albeit the same, have a great new freshness to them. The colors are wonderful on them, but additionally, the little engineering changes made with the shield and riot baton really made me happy, and overall, they were already great to begin with, so now they're just better. Considering all of that, I'm going to give Betty here a solid 8 out of 10. I absolutely recommend you get her. You can probably still find her right now for her initial $60 price, and I'd say that's a fair price to pay for such a fun figure. I don't regret buying this in the slightest. She is a joy to play with, and I think she is definitely going to go down as one of the better ones that came out this year. I'm glad to see that Daibadi is getting back into the swing of things. It seems like their production is improving, and that just makes me happy and hopeful for more figures coming soon. If you did like this video, make sure to like the video. Make sure to comment what you thought about the figure. What do you think of it? Did you get it? Are you going to get it? If you haven't subscribed, make sure to do that too, because it does help the channel. Make sure that you click my Hobby Link Japan link if you want to buy some figures. You pay no extra. I get a little bit of a kickback, and it helps the channel because I get like $5 a month from it. You can always donate as well, or just go to my Etsy and buy something, or join the Discord and we'll have fun in there. But no matter what you do, make sure to have a great day. Thank you so much for watching, and keep on collecting.